Hello families, this week's homework is all about comparing fractions. So today we're going to look at 3 different ways that we can compare fractions. First one we're going to look at is using benchmark fractions. We're also going to use common denominators in order to compare fractions. And then we are going to talk a little bit about that cross multiplying, which the children know as the butterfly method. They have not been allowed to use that in 4th grade so far because I have a special way that I like for them to use it. So that way it's a little more than just a trick. They can see what they're doing with that multiplication with that cross multiplying or that within that butterfly method. So we're going to start with benchmark fractions, and if you cook, you use benchmark fractions. They are the fractions that are known. So a lot of times I think of the measuring cups in my drawer, a quarter, a third, a half, 3/4. Those are the ones that we know and we use them a lot. And so we can use what we already know against something else. So like when I'm cooking, a lot of times I'll use a half a cup, but maybe not so much 7/8 of a cup. So half a cup or a half would be my benchmark fraction here. You can see with this homework, we are doing greater than, less than, or equal to. And for this page, I should not see any butterfly method on this page. I did go ahead and draw our tape diagrams at the bottom underneath each fraction set, so that way that students can go ahead and just fill them in. So for example, here's our first one, 1/2 and 7/8. So I went ahead and divided this one up. So the students should know 1/2 is this first bar because we have 2 sections, and we're just going to color in 1. And then 7/8 should be 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we're going to color in 7 of them because that's our numerator. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's kind of obvious looking here at our tape diagram that 7/8 is actually greater than 1/2. And we do talk in 4th grade that if students can't remember which way to move their sign, it is like a munch, munch, munch. They want to munch, munch, and eat the number with the greater value. Although I know when they're younger, they do draw teeth in there. We don't draw teeth anymore in 4th grade, so just put the symbol there. But if you need to think about that that's the way the sign goes, then totally still do that. For this next one, number 2, I did not put the spaces in there, and there's a reason why. They are both cut into 12ths. And so I could go ahead and cut these into 12ths, and a lot of times students might see 6/2, and they might know right away that 6/2 is also equivalent to 1/2. So you could either do 1/2, or if you wanted to do 12ths here, okay, you need to have 6 on each side. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, good gracious. Okay, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So both of my bars, if I did 12ths right here, they would both look the same. So if I were to color in 6 and then I were to color in 3, it would very obvious be that 6/12 is greater than 3/12. It's just like if I had a pizza and I cut it into 12 pieces. I ate 6, Parker ate 3. Miss Caudill ate more pizza than Parker because it was all part of the same, they're all the same denominator. So even looking at it here with 1/2 or 6/12 and then 3/12, 1, 2, 3, you can tell right there that 6/12 is greater than 3/12. So this is what you've got going on for 1 through 12. There are 2 word problems at the bottom. Please also show your work for these if you feel comfortable comparing them without the benchmark diagrams shown in this tape diagram. That's fine. If you just want to jot your work out here, that's fine too, but definitely explain how you know, show that work, show that thinking for this. So in a nutshell, that's benchmark. Benchmark fractions are the ones that we know. The other way that we're going to compare fractions this week is using a common denominator. Again, we are still not using that butterfly method just yet. And this might remind you of back in high school where you had to find the least common multiple of things, also known as the LCM. Excuse me. And so this one actually has all of the steps set out for you right here so you can refresh your memory since it's been a hot minute. So step 1 is find the least common multiple, and then step 2 is multiply so that both fractions have the least common multiple as the denominator. And then step 3, you can then compare your fractions. So here you can see with 1/4 and 2/3, they wrote down the 4 and the 3, which is the denominator for each of these two fractions. Then we counted the multiples of 4. Multiples is just like skip counting. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. And 3, 6, 9, 12. But once we have this multiple, we stop right there. We're not looking for a greatest multiple. We're looking for the least common. So here you can see that it was 12. So in order to get 12, we have to multiply that 4 times 3 in order to get 12. And students should know if you do it to the bottom, you also have to do it to the top. So then 1 times 3 is 3. And in order to get this 3 right here up to that 12, we have to multiply by 4. So 3 times 4 is 12. Do it to the bottom. You also have to do it to the top. And 4 times 2 is 8. So 1/4 is really the same thing or equivalent to 3/12, which we see right here. And then 2/3 is equivalent to 8/12. And again, like we said earlier with that last piece, if they have the same denominator, if I have a pizza cut into 12 pieces, they both have 12 pieces. I eat 3 and Alyssa eats 8. Well, Alyssa was hungrier than I am. She ate 8 pieces of pizza here. So then we know 2/3 is greater. So looking at 2/5 and 3/4, we're going to go ahead and list the multiples of 5. And I know it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. I'll go ahead and stop right there. And then for the 4th, we're going to list the multiples of 4, which you know is 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and I ran out of room. So I'm looking here if we have any in common. Now we want the least, so we want the number with the least value. And I'm looking here, and I'm seeing that really 20 and 20 they have in common, and that's the first number that they have in common. So that's going to be our least common multiple there. So for this one, we're going to take 2/5 equals blank 20ths, because we know 20 is our new denominator here. And I know 5 times 4 will give me 20. If I do it to the bottom, I also have to do it to the top. So 2 times 4 is 8. So 2/5 is equivalent to 8/20ths, and I'm going to go ahead and write that right here. And then we're going to look at our other fraction, which is 3/4. And at 3/4, again, we're going to keep our denominator the same as a 20th. And 4 times 5 is 20. Do it to the bottom. You also have to do it to the top. So 3 times 5 is 15. So then that gives you 15/20ths. And again, looking at this, because we have the same denominator, we can just look at our numerators here. And I know that 15 is greater than 8. So then that also means that 3/4 is greater than 2/5. So friends, that is what you're doing on this page. There's one more example here for you. And then at the bottom, I do want you to go ahead and list the multiples until you find that least common multiple. And then go ahead and do your work just like it is up here on the example where you're showing how you're multiplying in order to get that least common multiple there. And again, on this page, still no butterfly method. All right, 3rd page. We're kind of putting it all together here. So we're still comparing, but now you have your choice. If you want to use benchmark fractions, you can. If you want to use those common denominators, that's a lot what we just did with the least common denominator, you may. Or you can now cross multiply, which is what you called the butterfly method in 3rd grade. But now in 4th grade, we call it cross multiplying. And when you think of cross multiplying, it's just because you're multiplying across the two numbers. Let me find a scrap paper real quick. Okay, so I'm going to do this sample right here that we did with the 3/5 and 4/10 with that cross multiplying. So 3/5 and 4/10. And again, this is when we are comparing fractions together. So excuse me. So when you cross multiply, it is just like that. You're going across just like that, and then this and this. And this is where our students call it the butterfly method because it kind of looks like a butterfly. In order to complete our butterfly here for our cross multiplication, Ms. Cottle requires that you also put antenna, and you'll see what we're doing with that, and you have to put a little bottom on it too. So when we cross multiply, students should know we're going to multiply these two numbers together. So 10 times 3, which is 30, and then 5 times 4, which is 20. So that's what goes under the antennas. And down here in the bottom, we're actually going to multiply these two numbers, 5 and 10, which is 50. And in doing so, we're actually creating two equivalent fractions. So instead of 3/5, we have the fraction 30/50ths. And you can see here because each was multiplied by 10, and this was also multiplied by 10. And then 4/10 is equivalent to 20/50ths. Again, this was multiplied by 5, and this was multiplied by 5. So just like when we create those equivalent fractions, you can multiply or divide by any number as long as you are doing it to both the numerator and the denominator. And that's exactly what we did here. We multiplied both the numerator and the denominator by 5, and then we multiplied both the numerator and the denominator by 10. So we really just found equivalent fractions in doing so. But the great thing about this is that now they both have the same denominator. And so we can see right here, 30/50ths or 20/50ths. Well, 30/50ths is going to be greater, which means right here that 3/5 is going to be greater than 4/10. So friends, I know this looks like a lot, but if you are going to use that butterfly method, aka cross multiplication, this is what you're doing with Ms. Cottle. Otherwise, it is a big no-no because that's just a trick. I want you to really see how you're making equivalent fractions out of this. I want you to understand it. So for this second one, I've kind of got started for you already. And so we had 4/12, so I'm going to do it here on my paper. And then 3/6, and we need to decide greater than, less than, or equal to. Again, if you want to use benchmark fractions or find it the least common denominator, you can do that too. But I'm going to do one more example with this cross multiplication. So first thing is we loop across, and then we need antenna, antenna, and then their bottom. And so we're going to multiply straight across. So 6 times 4 is 24, and then 12 times 3 is 36. And then to get this little bottom right here, see how they're kind of looped up together, it's going to be 12 times 6. 6 times 2 is 12. Whoops. And then regroup that one. That's a 7, so that gives you 72. So now 4/12 we're going to write as an equivalent fraction. So our numerator would be 24, and then our denominator would be 72, greater than, less than, or equal to. And so here our numerator for our equivalent fraction is 36, and our denominator is 72. So 4/12 is equivalent to 24 70 seconds. Not 72, that's for sure. 70 seconds. And then 3/6 is equivalent to 36 70 seconds. And again, this is not like your least common denominator, but it does give you that common denominator. So then you can see right away that 36 is greater than 24. So then we know that 4/12 is less than 3/6. So again, if you're going to use that cross multiplication with butterfly method, I need to see all of this work, please. And then at the bottom, you are using your tape diagrams, and then we have a couple word problems. And then the last page is, again, just kind of your choice, whatever you want to do, putting it all together. As always, please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks.